You worked with one of my all-time favorite artists too, Mac Miller.
Yeah.
How did you first meet Mac?
So we were recording at ID Labs, right? So Edan started a studio called ID Labs. That's where Wiz recorded. That's where we first met. And that's where we worked out of. That was like our hub in Pittsburgh, and it was a creative hub for all of these artists. And so we were recording there all the time, and there almost every day. And Mac was a high school student and, was coming to ID Labs to try to record his own stuff as well. And so we just started running into each other.
And Wiz had already, he was buzzing, let's say, right?
He was buzzing. Yeah, for sure. He was buzzing and was really starting to do his thing. So when I first met Mac, he would play me some records, we would go into the side room, he'd play me what he's working on, blah, blah, blah. And I would just give him some advice, or like, oh, that's really dope, or, maybe you should do this, maybe, whatever. Just very arm's length, like, it
wasn't like instant, like first meeting, this guy's great, we got a vibe, like let's work together. It wasn't like that at all.
That at all. It was, we would run into each other, like, hey, can I play you a couple records? Like, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, this one's really good, blah, blah, blah. Very, just very informal. And then one day he said, I made a couple records, and I think, and this is months later, and this is sort of the beginning of my next mixtape. And I was like, cool, let's listen to him. So we sat down. I remember the room we sat down in. And he played me a couple of records that were songs that would end up on Kids' mixtape. And these were way better than what he had played me before. And that's indicative of how he would continue to grow. Like, Mac grew like crazy. Like, every
album was like exponential growth, right?
Exponential growth.
I saw that.
And so that happened early on, right? Where the first records were fine, like they were cool, but it wasn't like anything that made me, think anything at all other than like, all right, yeah, cool, man. Like, but when he played me those Kids records, I was like, wow, like these are really good, like really, really good. And the growth was really surprising. I said to myself, maybe you should take this relationship a little bit more seriously. From there, we just started talking more often, more advice. He saw what we were doing with Wiz, and eventually it's just like, hey, can you get behind me like you're getting behind Wiz? Not making the same exact moves or anything, but like, I need a team. And he saw what was happening on the Wiz side, and we ended up coming together.
What do you think made Mac so unique compared to other artists, if you had to say? Because I feel like he's unique.
He's totally unique. And it's incredible to me how he's become this just legendary artist. You start off in this little studio in Pittsburgh, and we're all from Pittsburgh and whatever. Again, you don't know what's going to be, how the book is going to go, kind of a thing. And so to see how it's ended up is just unbelievable, in terms of his artistry, in terms of the respect for him as an artist, and how he just continued to take leaps and bounds with every project. For the first time, the fans had someone just like themselves on stage. Where that hadn't really been the case. Like, stars had always been like these people you look up to, like that had this presence and had this and were tall and looked beautiful and, all this kind of stuff. It's like, of course they're a star. And then Mac was just like his fans. Like, you would walk through a show and all these kids were the same age as him, basically. And I think they saw a lot of themselves in him, this relatability that's
a good word for it,
that people felt towards him that maybe they didn't feel towards other stars. I think that really shifted things in culture in general, but is something that made him so different.
He put some of his insecurities out there. He was very vulnerable in his records, especially later on. He aged a bit. Swiss Beats said, the music industry is one big competition to see who could be the most honest. Because when you think about like Eminem, like, put the vulnerabilities out there, or you think about, remember when Kanye dropped like When It All Falls Down? He's like, we're all self-conscious. I'm just the first to admit it. It's like this level of truth really resonates for people. And I think it's like part of our zeitgeist today, wouldn't you say, where we've reached this, almost feels like we're moving towards an apex of like vulnerability in some ways. Like, do you feel like records are getting more vulnerable? Do you think artists are becoming more vulnerable? Like, have some of these artists we mentioned, like Eminem, Mac Miller, maybe, Kanye, is it reaching sort of like a critical mass where you feel like we're finding more honesty in music today? Yeah,
and I think that all the people that you named, played a part in that. You know what I mean? And Mac certainly helped take it to a new level, in talking about his own problems, talking about his vulnerabilities, his insecurities to an even greater extent, than just saying we all have insecurities. Like, he was diving into his insecurities and being very honest about them. And I think you'll find today a lot of artists that are okay with showing those insecurities because of artists like Mac who sort of raised their hand early and said, like, these are all the things that I'm going on. I think that magic in him, where he was so honest and relatable, gave him this immense presence, and that became this like greatness around him.
When he passed, there was an outpouring like I've never seen.
Yeah.
Do you agree? For when an artist passed. And I feel like it's because he was so real. He was showing us so much that we were connected to him in a way where we couldn't maybe connect at that level with other artists who have passed.
For sure. The outpouring you saw, particularly on social media or whatever, so many artists that you might not have even known that they knew each other, but they did because Mac was so giving of himself and so many people were attracted to him in that way.
When Mac tragically passed, like, do you remember where you were when you found out about that or got the phone call? Talk us through that.
So I teach a class every fall for Carnegie Mellon at their LA campus. And I had just walked out the door to get into my car to go to class, to go teach the class. And my phone rings and it's my wife, Ellen, and she's bawling. And she said, "Oh my God, Mac died." And I was so confused. It's like, it's not something you're expecting to hear, right? And so I just stood there in a daze. Like, I just didn't, it was registering, but not registering. I called the head of the school and I said, "Look, I just got some really bad news and I can't come in." And that's how I found out, and that was the moment, and obviously I was heartbroken.
Was the rest of the day just a daze for you, basically, I imagine?
Honestly, for the next month, a complete daze. I was able to kind of after a couple of days, like, go through my regular day, if you will, but not with clarity, and not, without emotion. And so there was a bit of a fog for a number of weeks, before I could start to feel like I was having normal days. And so that's what it was like for me.
You guys set the record for most albums sold independently.
We were first independent situation to go number one in a long time. And then in 2013, when we released Watching Movies, that was like the super, I forget what they called it, but it was the week where like Kanye was coming out, J. Cole was coming out, and Mac was coming out. And so we actually were the number 3 album that week. We had set the date, and then we had heard Kanye was coming out. We heard J. Cole was coming out. And we had the discussion, like, should we move it? Like, if we want to try to have a number 1, like, should we move the date? We talked about it like we did with just about everything, and it was like, no, like, this is kind of cool. Yeah. And, like, let's just keep it and let's just run with it,
I heard you in another podcast actually talk about, you were diagnosed with OCD and, coming out with that whole thing. And is that something that, did the pandemic inspire you to open up about that? That I don't know.
No. I had opened up about it prior to it. So after I was diagnosed with OCD and kind of came to terms with everything, I decided to open up about it. And the way that I decided to do that was to write kind of this op-ed, if you will, for Billboard. I actually wrote it first, and then I approached Billboard. Like,
amazing.
I think that this is an important topic. Are you guys, interested in putting this out? And I was inspired by my friend Evan, who is a musician and a writer, and way back in the early 2000s was Avril Lavigne's guitar player.
Evan Hobenfeld.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good dude. Yeah.
Really good dude.
Yeah.
And we're friends on Facebook.
He had an eating disorder, which he opened up about.
He had an eating disorder, and he wrote about it on Facebook. And he said, I've been hiding this, for a long time, but I'm now putting it out there that this is an issue I have, and I'm working on it. And I was like, holy fuck, that's so brave. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so amazing that he did that. And so when I was going through what I was going through, I felt inspired by that to do the same thing, right? And put it out there, because I'd been trying to hide my anxieties for so long. And I was through with that. You know what I mean? And I felt like if I'm here hiding my anxieties from the world, if you will, or making it seem like everything's okay when it really wasn't, how many other people are doing that? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And in particular in entertainment or music, whatever, everyone is sort of like,
it's a lot of facade going on.
A lot of facade, Yeah. Like, yeah, everything's great. How are you? And I have this big album, and I have this, that, the other. And it's like people just leave it at that, but it's like, no, how are you doing?
Exactly.
Because at the height of some of our successes, that's when the anxiety was the worst.
Is that right?
Yeah. That's when I felt the most awful. And so
was the feeling going into that a little bit more? Was it like I could lose this all? Was there fear? Is it a little fear behind it, or
it was change? That's a good question. Is like what is it about that?
Yeah, what got triggered there? Yeah,
I think for the most part, it's change. It's a higher profile. It's maybe a feeling of more responsibility. And so but I have to dive deeper into that. That's a really good question. But but to me, I'm trying to get back on track. I felt the need to share it because it almost gave me additional purpose, right? It made it feel like I was actually doing something about it, that I was taking control of the situation from my own standpoint, right? Where I'm not hiding anymore. This is who I am, right? Mm-hmm. And to make other people feel less alone about it. It's very much like coming out, look, I've never come out as homosexual or something like that, but I have to imagine it's something similar, right?
As you were sharing that, I'm getting that whole experience being similar.
Right? Yeah. Where it's like you feel a certain way, you hide it, this, that, and the other, and then at some point you come out, right? And so this was me coming out about my anxieties and about all the things that I've been feeling and wanting to say it so that we can normalize it, so that I don't have to feel weird that I have these anxieties, and that I don't want other people to feel weird if they're feeling that or feel abnormal or whatever. Because to me, it's a lot more prevalent than we think, and we should talk about it. And by talking about it and normalizing it, we can feel better about it.
Yes. And in the general, I think that's true. There's a lot of people that are hiding, hiding these insecurities back and all that. But in the music business, I feel like it's like in a hyper way, because the music industry really is okay. Like, I was thinking about this earlier, and it's like, it could be a pretty unforgiving business, right? It really, like, you can have a hit 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and like you're irrelevant today. It's insane. So
it goes back to your question about after I left Arista, and it's like, were all these doors open for me? It's actually quite the opposite, right? Because I was no longer L.A. Reid's assistant. Right. So what do you need for, what can I help you with anymore? So the calls stop getting returned.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
Benjy, I'm so happy you shared that, dude. I had a friend at Live Nation who was in a meeting with the then CEO of Live Nation, and he heard him say, I know that if I lose this job, 70% of the people I think are my friends will not get back to me.
Right.
It was like, okay.
Yeah.
And he was okay with that.
It's the truth in our business. You know what I mean?
Isn't that kind of sad, though?
No, it's super sad. When I got the job with LA, you know, I made a conscious decision to be very cool with everybody, because sometimes when you get into a position of like a little bit of power like that, right? Like I wasn't LA, but like I was the person you had to talk to get to LA a little bit. So you had a little bit of a gatekeeperness to you, just like in your own little world there.
Absolutely.
And you can either take that and be an asshole and shrug people off and this, that, and the other, or you can be really kind about it. And I made the conscious decision to be really kind about it and to be nice to everybody. And so I think that after leaving Arista, that helped me, you know, was like, oh yeah, Benjy was always cool to me. That the phone call maybe returned, you know,
and
or whatever.
Still may.
Right. I think an ounce of sincerity and honesty and all of that kind of stuff was what we needed. And I felt like I had the ability to at least vocalize, you know, or put into words how I was feeling, and I needed to use that to sort of translate how I was feeling to hopefully, like I said, normalize it or make other people feel more comfortable about it. And you wouldn't believe the outpouring of not just support, but like thank yous I got from people that I knew and from people that I didn't know.
Wow.
Emailing me, like, I just read your article in Billboard. Thank you so much. And then opening, like, people I've never even met or people that I have
shared
known.
Something secret to them.
Would then share in their emails, like, you know, I've been dealing with this for this many years and whatever. And, like, feeling that openness, it's one of the best things I've ever done.
That's beautiful. Humanity, right? It's like allowing ourselves to be human.
Yeah.
Which for some reason is not allowed.
Right.
It's bizarre.
Right.
I had somebody come on who's a brilliant artist, and he was like, you know, we're treating our, you know, humans and our brains like we're like computers, and we can just hack it and make it go fat. Like, he's like, really, we're more like flowers, and we're all blooming at different times and different. I thought that was pretty brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like, how many productivity hacks can we have? You know what I mean? And is that really what we're built to do and be here for? You know, going through all of the hard changes that happen in the music business and just in life in general, just growing up and dealing with different things and losses and changes in relationships and, you know, things not going how you want them and things going very much how you want them to go. All of those things, whether they're positive or negative, are still all changes that you have to sort of adapt to, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I first started coming into some money, you would think like, oh, it's an amazing positive thing that must have only been great feelings, right? Yes.
But it's not. And it can be scary because you're used to not having money, you know? And so it's different and it's weird. And
don't tell me it's like Biggie said, is it more money, more problems?
in a way, you know, at least in the short term, right? Yeah. Like you're adjusting to it, you know? And so dealing mental health wise with all of these things, for me, because it's not the same for everybody. Some people go through some of these things, it doesn't affect them, and they're just built differently.
We all have different makeups.
For me, it was dealing with all these things, which were very hard and felt very personal, and dealing with the mental health aspect of those things has been in my career, you know, the biggest challenge.
It almost feels like there was a bruise there that you didn't know you had that got pushed on through some of these experiences, right?
For sure. Going through these experiences exacerbated and really, you know, the OCD really reared its head from doing, you know, from all of those things happening. And what I can say is important is what I was saying before, which is first of all, sharing it with your loved ones so you don't feel alone in it, right? Like, you know, whoever that is, it doesn't have to be family. It can be your friends or whatever.
There's somebody listening right now to this that's probably getting benefit, that's maybe holding on to something.
Yeah,
so
I hope so. Yeah. You know, sharing it and like getting it off your own chest, you know, I think is really important. And to have people, you know, it's almost like, you know, in AA, you know, which I haven't personally experienced, but, you know, from understanding it, it's like you have a sponsor, right? You have people that you talk to in a meeting and say, look, you know, and so to me, it's somewhat similar, which is like sharing, you know, what you're going through and having people on your team, you know, not just your therapist, but, you know, your girlfriend or your parent or your friend.
Man.
Yeah. So that they can check in on you. And so you don't, and so you know that other people know what you're going through, because that's one of the biggest challenges is like when you hold on to it and you don't share it, it makes you feel very, very alone.
Yes, it's so isolating, right?
So isolating because no one knows how you feel.
Yeah.
And you want other people to know how you feel because they can help you.
And it festers too. That's an important point.
100%. And I've learned a lot of lessons through it. I know myself better now.
Yeah.
Through all of these experiences, and I feel like I can be a better friend.
That's beautiful. I
feel like I can be a better parent, a better husband, you know, a better son, a brother, you know, all these things. I feel like I can just be, you know, I'm a more sensitive person, and that I can offer more, in helping other people because I've gone through
because you're battle tested and you've, you know, and you've put yourself out there. Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm like, you've had, you know, a lot of great success in your music career. And I'm like, you know, that compared to the response you got from the Billboard article of like putting out the mental health topic and the OCD, I mean, it probably rivals the feeling of breaking through with an artist in a big way, right?
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's totally different in a way. But in terms of if I was like, you know, ranking things that I've done, I would put that article first. Look, the music that we put out helps people, but a song that we might put out that doesn't go number one might still help a lot of people.
That's very true.
You know, and so putting out music in general is an amazing thing that I feel very proud about, you know, being a part of. Yeah. Right. But to put a competition, right? Like, oh, we were the number one album. Yeah. You know, above sharing something that may help people directly, you know, in their mental health battles.
They're both great feelings, I'm sure, but like one feels like it's more for the spirit and one feels like it could be a little more ego too, a little bit. I mean, it feels good to say, hey, we got a number one album. Yes, it's a great feeling, like the hard work. It's not like you didn't earn the number one. Everybody worked their ass off for it, but it's an accolade.
Yeah.
It's an accolade, right?
Yeah.
That's what
I'm saying. They're very different achievements. Yeah. But to me, if I were to rank them, you know, because it helped me, but it helped other people. And hopefully it was just another step along the way for everyone being sort of more sensitive about that thing. And I have to say that has to be a bigger achievement than, you know, who sells the most in a week.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, if I had to rank them, that's what it would be. But, you know, but certainly part of what I'm here to do in the music business is to fight for our artists that we work with and to do as great of a job as possible. So having that number one album is certainly something I'm proud of, to say, look, we held hands together and with a very small team, very much independently, you know, had a number one album.
And you got to feel good about that.
And that's a great feeling too.